I wanted to additionally talk about like the elephant in the room, which is some big things we aren't voting on and never will get to vote on, which were the dollop of liquor licenses that sort of was passed through the system very rapidly, and I don't know how many of you are aware of what happened recently, so there was some legislation done a couple of years ago, pushed and spearheaded by Ayanna Pressley to promote economic development in some of the communities of color and the so-called Main Street neighborhoods, and it had as a primary driver additional liquor licenses for those communities, on the assumption that liquor licenses allow restaurants to operate at higher margins, and you can have more successful businesses, and you can have a vibrant community built out of that. I had my issues with Ayanna's theory of the case and asked her to visit Philadelphia if you think liquor licenses are the answer to neighborhood vibrancy. But be that as it may, because actually there's a lot of good thought behind that legislation. The legislation was passed, but it also included 5 licenses per year that would be unrestricted and allowed to go to other neighborhoods. Now, the legislation was tied up because of some language problems, technical stuff that was finally ironed out just around late December or early January. Last year's 5 licenses and this year's 5 licenses all got released at the same time. And they got released in a way that, for whatever reason, the Liquor Licensing Board felt that as soon as they knew that they were going to have those licenses, a 30-day clock started, and and they were going to award them and hear the cases based on how quickly people made the applications. So every incentive was made to sidestep the system, to use sharp elbows to knock other people out of the way, to create a royal rumble of a stampede toward the licensing board. And one of the side effects of this massive lack of thought on the process was that most resident associations in neighborhoods, associations such as ours that are member-based, that have a fairly deliberate and sometimes 2-step process to vet liquor licenses, whether they be new licenses or upgrades to licenses, as was the case with the ones that affected the North End. Basically, the Liquor Licensing Board said, we're going to award these licenses 30 days from the announcement, and essentially, like people who can vote, great, vote. But if you can't, tough. And we were one of the organizations that, because of the timing, just it didn't align. I mean, their licensing hearing was a couple of days before the meeting, where we would have voted on the licenses. So essentially, we were not given the opportunity to vote on these licenses as the community. I've made a fair issue out of that. There is a piece on our website that was on our homepage. It's now on our ZLC page that anyone can go and read, that makes the case that maybe there's certain neighborhoods that really we should go through a more serious process in determining whether or not we need these additional liquor licenses. But the main point that I made is we should never have a situation where a city group says, yeah, we have a residence process, but you know what, we're going to throw these licenses up in the air and we're going to push the neighborhood associations aside, and we're going to let the whole thing happen without them. I just thought that was wrong. I think a lot of other people feel it's wrong. I think this would be worthy of a letter to the mayor, probably. Would it go to ONS or would it go to the Liquor Licensing Board, do you think?
If you send it to, you can send it to the mayor and the licensing board.
Okay. All right, so we can get more information on who to address it to, but people who feel that this was as much of a wrong as I do, and I'll admit I'm a little biased on this as one of the folks that spends a lot of time, as do a lot of the other volunteers in this and other associations, to try to convene neighbors so that we can talk about the future of the neighborhood. To just be bumped out of the process entirely just is infuriating. And anyhow, that's my editorial comment. I don't know, Victor, if you have anything to add to that.
further, shall I add it now?
Yes, why not?
Well, let's see, I'm sure that those who watch, look at Matt's northernwaterfront.com know the outcome of the applications for these 5 licenses. I don't think there is anybody who doesn't, but anyway, I will mention it.
Yes.
Last week, there were 3 awarded, and I should describe what the licenses are. They are updates from wine, beer, and cordials to all alcohol. They are free licenses being given by the licensing board to the applicant. We are told that they're worth $350,000 to $400,000.
Between
Why-
250 and 400.
Yeah, why there should be a gift like this to anyone is puzzling to begin with. And why the city shouldn't get the money instead of the equivalent value being put in the pocket of the applicant is, well, I don't make those decisions. So what happened was last week, 3 of the 10 were granted to Trattoria di Monica, which is on Prince Street, Mare, which is in the alley off of Hanover Street, where Itis was, and Cantina Italiana. The chairman of the licensing board at the vote said as to Monica, I think they have demonstrated public need. They produced 2,200 signatures. Mare produced 536 signatures in support, of course. And the chair said it's a different kind of seafood restaurant.
It's a good slogan.
Cantina Italiana, the comment was it's the oldest restaurant in the North End. I think there is a public need. Now, there were 2 others who applied who were heard on that day, which was last week. One of them was Ducale on Causeway Street, Causeway Commercial. And the other was Antico Forno. They were not given the gift of $350,000 to $400,000. Ducale's owner got what, I don't know the details of that, Mary, perhaps. What was the question? Tell us.
Yeah, no, I was just saying,
I can't hear you.
Ducale's owner got one at a different location in East Boston. Here is another.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
We have colleagues
That's
over here.
absolutely not true, by the way. And
what would we not? I don't know.
that we got a license, and the license that we received in East Boston is a restricted neighborhood license. It has no value at all. It has to go back to the city. So could you apologize for the misinformation you just put up? Mary?
This was reported in Universal Hub.
Is that a newspaper, or is that some guy who sits in his pajamas and
A lot of
blogs?
people around the city read it and
I'm a newspaper
reports
man, didn't I?
widely on licenses, so it's not correct. I'm sorry to repeat.
Well, it wasn't correct, so.
But he was the source, and actually it was also repeated in North End Waterfront, so if that's not correct, again, that needs to be corrected.
And it was.
Well, you did it here, you probably should let the Universal Hub people
I
know.
did,
that that's
and you
not
corrected it. If you
Good, okay, great. Yeah, well, I wanted to give you a chance to say something because I know that we want to make sure the record is correct.
Okay, and today, the licensing board voted on 2 North End restaurants. Only one was an application for an upgrade, and that was Carmelina. And the reason it was denied was there were none available, but the board seemed to show that they were in favor of it. The second one was Scopa, which is a wine, beer, and alcohol license. And we had a ZLC meeting a year ago on Scopa. We didn't put it on an agenda for a vote because our policy is until you file an application, we don't think it's appropriate to vote because we don't know that as our members won't know what they're voting on until you've committed yourself to hours and number of seats and number of bar seats and that sort of thing in an application. So it's never gotten on our agenda. It was deferred because there are no licenses available.
So still, it's
So
deferred.
it could go on our next.
Okay, all right. And we may want to do that. But you know, there's a new liquor licensing board because of this legislation that I referenced before, appointed by the mayor, different people than the old one, which was appointed by the governor. And I'm not going to quote any politicians, but some people in the State House said they were afraid that there might be a process breakdown if they sort of delegated this back to the city and kept it, you know, and gave up control, because the state essentially had control of the process, even though, you know, this liquor licensing board had to work hand in glove with the Office of Neighborhood Services and other groups. One politician that I spoke with recently, who's a rather senior person and accomplished and a really, you know, well-respected person, said, seems like the worst fears were realized in the way this liquor licensing board is running at this point. And you know, I was telling Maria earlier, I mean, we love Maria, but she's going to hear a lot of grousing from me, because the handshake between this liquor licensing board, ONS, and the neighborhood associations is really breaking down, and we've got to fix that. I think some of you remember when Frank DiPasquale, who's also the Mare owner, was in front of this group to have a discussion about when he bought the Pompeii and changed it to Il Panino Hanover Street, or Il Panino, Trattoria Il Panino. And he upgraded from beer and wine to an all alcohol, not through one of these free licenses that Victor talks about, but actually a license that he purchased he transferred from one of his other properties, technically. You know, we had a spirited debate, and that's the way it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be time to have a spirited debate where people can say what they think, and there can be a little time for the dust to settle and people can rethink about it. By the time we got to our vote, I want to be clear, we supported the license. So it's not as if, you know, Lou Brewer is going to say, oh, no liquor licenses ever. That's not the point we're making. We're not trying to stop it. What we're saying is we need to discuss each and every one of them. And it's just not cool to get a whole group of them, throw them into the system, create an arbitrary 30-day clock, give everyone the worst incentives in the world to hire lawyers with the sharpest elbows to get to the front of the line by whatever means necessary, and hope that you can get a free $250,000 license because, you know, you gamed the system better than the other guy. That's not the way this is supposed to work. And, you know, I say this looking at the camera to the mayor and the city council. We need help. That really, this needs to be reined in. It's an opportunity for improvement. Let's put it that way. Let's put a positive spin on it. And I'm sure that there will be improvements over time. But unfortunately, what we experienced was the percentage of all alcohol to total liquor licenses in our neighborhood was approximately, I think it was 34%, and in an instant, it's gone to 40%. And, you know, maybe that's not a big deal, but, you know, there's always this worry that someone with an all alcohol license might just look at the economics of operating just a bar as opposed to a restaurant and say, bar economics might actually be superior. And that may not be something we want in the neighborhood. And there's no legal distinction between a bar and a restaurant if you really, really examine how the liquor licensing laws are written. So you can do something like that. And I think there are several examples of establishments, not run by anyone in this room, who sort of operate at the cusp of sort of being a bar rather than a restaurant. So we're just concerned about that, and we think that we need to have discussions. Yes,
Could the recipients of these new licenses turn around and sell them pretty quickly?
Yes.
Yeah, they're these, unlike the Main Street licenses in IANA's legislations, which are non-transferable, and unlike the license that Phil referenced, there are non-transferable licenses that go back to the city. These licenses are fully transferable, hence they have high market value. So the answer is yes. And in fact, some of the applicants were immediately, there were various flip strategies. I don't think they were any of the applicants who were awarded licenses, but some of them had sort of, you know, announced flip strategies, like we're going to take this part of the license and sell it there and all. So it's just there's opportunity for improvement in the system.
Could you at least mention the fact that if a business sells their license, they're no longer a business anymore? It's not as if these businesses are turning around and going on the market and selling a free gift, as you phrased it, from the city. If a business, first of all the ones who got them in the North End turned in a beer and wine license that has a significant value.
Far
as well.
less of a value, but yeah, they
But it
did
has a
turn
value.
in, they turn in
But it's
tens
not
of
as if-
thousands as opposed to hundreds of
It's
thousands.
not as if these businesses can even benefit from this until, one, they go out of business, or two, they close. So if a business goes out of business and has hundreds of thousands of dollars built up in debts to distributors and everybody else, yes, the city has given them something that they can then sell to another business to either go in that space or in another part of the city. But the idea that it's a gift, like, it's just so
Well,
wrong. I mean,
it's
is a permit a gift?
Afford- May I address that?
Is
well,
a
let me
permit a
just-
gift? When we give somebody a permit, the city gives a landowner a permit. Is that a gift? That has a value.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you make a fair point regarding, you know, the phraseology that we use, but I would say, I think there are certain places where the city transfers value to people. If you get a variance to build a 5th story on a building, you have, value has been transferred to you. There's no situation where that building is going to be worth less with an extra story than it was before. If Don
but it-
Chaffaro gets, you know, the opportunity to build 400 feet above the current ceiling of where it can be now, that's a transfer of value. And we need to have sober discussions with, with a city that has a lot of issues regarding how are we going to pay for certain things, with a transportation infrastructure that doesn't work at all half the time. You know, to be transferring value like that is something that at least there should be discussion about
But
before
if
it
the city
happens.
decides to put a park across the street from your house, that's a gift, apparently, according to the same thing. If
Well-
the city grants a trash contract to a contractor, that's a gift too. That has
I-
value.
Didn't you have to buy the liquor license before this happened?
I'll grant you that there's a semantic distinction between, but I think we probably should move on, but I know.
There is a third alternative that I would like to mention.
Okay,
Very
quickly.
Which is that the person who has received what I still will call a gift, $350,000, $400,000, may sell it and operate without a license for the time being. He still has a CB license, and purchase a wine and beer license on the market for $40,000 or $50,000, thereby having made a $350,000 profit.
It's possible. Anyhow, I understand you're looking at, as a business owner, you want to say there are those of us who are legitimate operators and are just trying to go and get licenses that are offered by the city, and this isn't the only time that the city has created licenses. And fair point. I mean, but there is a possibility of gaming the system, and the possibility is amplified and incredibly amplified when you crunch it into a short period, you do it during the holiday period, and you just basically try to just push it over the goal line when no one's looking. That's not great. That's not a great way to run a city. And all I'm saying to those politicians that are listening is, I think we can do better next time, and I think there's a lot of lesson. And I actually think the liquor licensing board is not being run so well right now, and we need to look at that too. So with that, I want to stop the president's report. I've said enough.